Bonjour, bienvenue à cette conférence de presse de la ministre des Affaires étrangères du Canada, Mélanie Joly. Je suis Boris Proulx, reporter au journal Le Devoir, et je serai le modérateur de cette conférence de presse. La ministre aura une déclaration, ensuite on passera à la période de questions, évidemment, sur la plateforme Zoom. So, if you're attending on Zoom, we will go to you after a few remarks by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mélanie Joly, and I'll hand you the mic after that. Madame la Ministre, à vous la parole.
Merci, Boris. Bonjour tout le monde. Hi, everybody. I'm right now in Krakow, Poland, just coming back from Poland, where I stayed 2 days. The goal of my visit was, as we commemorate the 1-year anniversary of Russia's war on Ukraine, was to not only show Canada's support and Canadian support to Ukraine, but also to address the security needs of Ukraine and Ukrainians. We already know that short term, they need to be able to defend and fight for their freedoms and defend their positions in occupied territories and that's why Canada will continue to offer heavy weaponry, but also on the longer term security needs of Ukraine. And I had the opportunity of seeing the impacts of the war, the physical impacts of the war, as I was with the mayor of Kyiv, and we went through different sites that had been bombarded by Russia in Kyiv. But also, I spoke about the unseen impacts of the war, the psychological trauma the population is facing, as I had a long and thorough discussion with the president's wife, Olena Zelenska. We also spoke about the importance of being there for reconstruction, the importance of demining, and also the question of accountability and addressing the issue of crimes against humanity, war crimes, the crime of aggression, and also sexual violence-related crimes. So, as my team may have sent you, I had numerous meetings with the president himself, with his chief of staff, with his wife, with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, with the Prosecutor General, with the Minister of the Interior, with also many civil society groups, business community groups, and police officers. So it was indeed a very thorough visit, and looking forward to answering your questions. Donc, Boris, je vais le faire en français maintenant. Alors, je suis présentement à Cracovie, en Pologne. Je reviens d'un séjour de 2 jours en Ukraine, où j'ai eu l'occasion, à l'aube du premier anniversaire de l'invasion russe de l'Ukraine, de réitérer le soutien, le support canadien aux Ukrainiens et à leur gouvernement. Bien entendu, nous avons parlé ensemble des besoins à court terme des Ukrainiens alors qu'ils sont au front présentement et défendent et repoussent l'agresseur russe. Mais aussi, j'ai eu l'occasion de parler des besoins en matière de sécurité à long terme de l'Ukraine. J'ai vu les impacts physiques de l'agression russe, que ce soit au niveau des bombardements qui ont affecté Kyiv, et j'ai eu l'occasion de faire une tournée de quelques sites qui ont été bombardés par les Russes avec le maire de Kyiv. Aussi, j'ai parlé des aspects qui sont plus invisibles, mais tout aussi difficiles, c'est-à-dire toutes les questions de traumatisme psychologique avec l'épouse du président Zelensky, Olena Zelenska. Nous avons parlé de reconstruction, de déminage, de responsabilité, donc tout ce qui est en lien avec la responsabilité légale de l'État russe au niveau des crimes contre l'humanité, crimes de guerre, crimes d'agression, et aussi tout ce qui est lié à la violence sexuelle auprès des femmes, des enfants et des hommes. Donc, mon équipe vous a certainement transmis l'information sur toutes les rencontres que j'ai eues. J'ai rencontré le président, son épouse, son chef de cabinet, le ministre des Affaires étrangères, le ministre de l'Intérieur, le procureur général de l'Ukraine, des policiers et policières, des membres de la société civile, ainsi que des membres de la communauté des affaires. Bref, j'ai été en mesure d'avoir un portrait assez large de ce qui se passe en Ukraine et des impacts de l'effort du Canada au pays. Alors voilà, je suis prête pour répondre à vos questions. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup. Pour la période de questions, veuillez utiliser le bouton « Lever la main » pour être reconnu. If you are attending on Zoom, please use the raise hand function at this point to ask a question. Première question, Mélanie Marquis, La Presse.
Bonjour, Madame Joly.
Allô, Mélanie.
C'est moi qui ai la première question, mais malheureusement, je vais être hors sujet. Je sais que vous avez beaucoup d'autres chats à fouetter, mais vous avez vu sans doute ce qui se passe avec l'étude du projet de loi C-13 qui se heurte à une résistance, à une fronde. Je me demandais, comme ancienne ministre responsable du dossier, c'est vous qui avez présenté aussi la première mouture du projet de loi. Comment est-ce que vous voyez ça, ce qui est en train de se jouer en comité puis au sein du caucus québécois également?
Écoute, Mélanie, c'est sûr que oui, en effet, j'ai beaucoup de sujets à traiter présentement, puis je reviens d'un pays qui est une zone de guerre, mais la question du français sera toujours importante pour moi. Sa protection est essentielle. On l'a dit dans le discours du trône de 2019, le français est une langue minoritaire qui est une langue que l'on doit protéger et je vais toujours être là comme un allié des francophones qui veulent défendre leur langue. Puis en même temps, le Canada a un système d'obligations constitutionnelles en matière de langue officielle et puis on doit être capable de respecter les minorités linguistiques.
Je vous relance un petit peu là-dessus. On s'est vu, Madame Joly, quand vous entendez Madame Lambropoulos, par exemple, qui propage des informations un peu erronées sur la loi 96, Monsieur Housefather qui prévient que les droits linguistiques des anglophones sont appelés à être, malmenés. Vous réagissez comment? Puis qu'est-ce que vous leur dites à vos députés qui sont des collègues montréalais, beaucoup qui sont à l'origine de cette opposition-là, qui risque de faire dérailler le projet de loi C-13? Merci.
Ben, je pense que mes collègues ont exprimé leur point de vue et ils sont dans leur droit, bien entendu, d'exprimer leur point de vue. Vous avez ma position. Puis en même temps, ce que je vous dirais, c'est que C-13 sera un projet de loi qui va être voté au Parlement. Et puis, le but, c'est de pouvoir renforcer la protection du français, assurer sa pérennité, puis respecter les obligations linguistiques de nos minorités. Un point, c'est tout.
Merci. Next up, Judith Wren, CTV.
Hello. Thank you for taking this question.
Hi, Judy.
Minister, can you please give us a sense of what Canadian personnel are now in Ukraine, the types of roles they are doing? We know they are in non-combat roles, but if you could give us a sense of the resources that has been devoted in, you mentioned some of the priorities, whether you spoke to policing in regards to sexual violence, and tell us their roles and whether or not you've directed resources to help with those requests and concerns.
Thank you, Judy. So at this point, the personnel that is in Ukraine on the diplomatic side is personnel that is there to first and foremost, support Ukrainians, particularly on the development side. I referred to two issues that I addressed during my visit, particularly the question of demining. And since the beginning of the war, since actually last June, we've invested $22.5 million to help Ukrainians demine their territory. These projects that are funded were identified by diplomats in Ukraine to fund, for the government to fund. Also, we announced $11 million in terms of funding for sexual violence, for countering sexual violence and dealing with the impacts of sexual violence. So training the police, making sure that also lawyers are well equipped to prosecute the cases and help survivors deal with the consequences of going through that trauma. So these are just two examples, but the everyday life of our diplomats is actually to connect with civil society, understand their needs, connect with the business community, see what can be done to help Ukraine's economy, connect also with security forces and police forces to know how we can also help to deal with the thousands of cases that the government is trying to prosecute as it's dealing with the war at the same time. And of course, our diplomats are very much involved in the diplomatic conversations about what's next for Ukraine, how can it deal with its short-term security needs, like I mentioned in my intro, but also longer term. And we are in contact with other G7 countries as lots of ambassadors meet many times per week to assess the situation. And Canada is always in a very strong leadership role because we have a good presence there and we are very much appreciated in all the efforts that we're providing to Ukrainians and their country.
Madame Joly, Minister Joly,
yes.
you didn't actually, you gave us the roles, but you didn't actually present numbers. Do you have official capacity numbers of Canadians working in Ukraine, as well as perhaps those in Ukraine for a non-capacity, whether they are, they are helping soldiers behind the scenes, training? What can you tell us about the official numbers for Canadians involved and non-official numbers?
Well, Judy, we can provide you that information. I don't have it at hand. I think your question is, so I addressed the question of diplomats. Of course, we also have, as you know, CAF members in Poland and in Great Britain supporting the training of Ukrainians, and we can provide you that information. While, of course, respecting the confidentiality of security operations, as you would know.
Prochaine question, Marie Vestel, Le Devoir.
Oui, bonjour Madame Joly, excusez-moi, j'allumais mon micro. Je voulais vous demander, dans vos conversations avec le président, avec son cabinet, est-ce qu'il a été question de cette coalition d'avions de chasse que réclame l'Ukraine et qu'est-ce que vous leur avez répondu?
Le président ne m'a pas fait de demande directement concernant les avions de chasse. On sait par contre que la défense et la protection de l'espace aérien ukrainien est extrêmement important. C'est pour ça qu'on a financé un système de défense antimissile avec les États-Unis qui a été annoncé lorsqu'on était à Mexico avec le premier ministre et le président Biden. Et c'est sûr qu'on a toujours fait notre part, on va continuer à faire notre part. Là, je suis présentement en Pologne. Plus tard, aujourd'hui, je m'en vais en Allemagne. C'est la conférence de sécurité de Munich, qui est une conférence où la grande majorité des ministres d'Affaires étrangères seront. Il y aura également une rencontre du G7 et j'aurai des conversations sur l'appui que l'on offre comme membre du G7, mais aussi que le G7 offre au cours, dans le fond, de ces rencontres-là. Je pense que la rencontre du G7 est samedi.
OK, juste pour poursuivre là-dessus, excusez-moi, il y a certains pays qui ont dit absolument pas, pour l'instant en tout cas, pour des avions de chasse. Il y en a d'autres qui ont eu l'air de laisser la porte ouverte, ne serait-ce qu'en faisant de la formation. Quelle est la position du Canada là-dessus? Vous dites que on a toujours été prêt à faire notre part. Donc, je veux juste voir où vous logez sur le spectre de l'ouverture ou pas à ça. Et juste, si je peux me permettre une mini sous-question, dans le financement d'aujourd'hui, ça part de 21,2 millions, dont 18,2 millions en partie ou en totalité d'une enveloppe déjà annoncée. Est-ce que vous pouvez juste préciser qu'il y a combien de nouvel argent aujourd'hui, s'il vous plaît?
Donc, au niveau de l'argent en particulier, Émilie de mon équipe pourra vous donner comme tous les détails de ce qui a été annoncé. Ce qu'on a annoncé de façon, juste pour te brosser un tableau, le premier ministre a annoncé 15 millions de dollars, surtout pour les questions de déminage au mois de juin dernier. Je suis allée rencontrer un groupe qui a reçu une partie de ce financement-là quand j'étais en Ukraine. Donc, je suis allée à Brovary, qui est à peu près à 1 heure de Kiev, et j'ai rencontré des personnes qui font du déminage et qui sont formées par ce groupe-là qui s'appelle le Hallow Trust. Et eux, on leur a donné 2 millions du 15 millions que j'ai annoncé. On a annoncé aujourd'hui, hier, 7,5 millions de plus à une autre organisation qui fait du déminage qui s'appelle Tetra Tech. Donc, ça fait en sorte que ça fait 22,5 millions de financement pour le déminage. Une partie qui avait déjà été annoncée, une partie de la nouvelle argent qu'on annonce. En même temps, on a annoncé 11 millions de dollars de plus pour la question des violences sexuelles, qui est de la nouvelle argent que j'ai annoncé pour faire 3 choses. Former les policiers, former aussi des avocats pour les aider à développer leur cause, à préparer leur cause et aider les survivants et les survivantes à gérer avec le traumatisme. Donc, ça, c'est l'information que je peux donner, mais bien entendu, Maëva et Émilie pourront, dans le fond, te donner plus les détails. Concernant...
Non, j'allais te relancer, mais oui, vas-y, excuse-moi.
OK. Concernant les avions de chasse, le Canada, on a toujours été non seulement très présent, mais aussi toujours prêt à aider davantage l'Ukraine. On a été le premier pays à envoyer des chars d'assaut. Nos chars d'assaut ont été les premiers à être livrés à la Pologne. Au même moment où on se parle, il y a encore des pays qui se posent la question s'il y a des chars d'assaut qui vont être exportés vers l'Ukraine ou non. Nous, on encourage le fait que d'autres pays, membres de l'OTAN ou non membres de l'OTAN, aident l'Ukraine parce qu'on pense que ça va avoir un impact sur le champ de bataille directement. Puis, du reste, on pense qu'on doit encore plus protéger l'espace aérien ukrainien et c'est pour ça que je m'en vais au G7 pour avoir ces conversations-là.
Okay. Merci.
Merci, Marie.
Prochain, Dylan Robertson, Canadian Press.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for taking our questions.
Hi,
Thanks. I'm wondering, what is the biggest challenge for Canada when it comes to our Ukraine policy? Is it a matter of difficulty in getting stuff over there on time? Is it a matter of Ukraine fatigue? What would you say is our biggest challenge?
So I wouldn't say it's a question of delivering on time because, like I mentioned to Marie in French, we're the first one to send our tanks to Poland. We've been also very much involved in the delivery of equipment, and CAF members have been doing that work for many other NATO members, states, and you've heard Minister Annan on this. I think there is a reckoning in Ukraine that not only is this a very difficult war, but there is fatigue on the part of the population, which is completely understandable. When we left Kyiv, there were 35 missiles that were launched across the country, including in Lviv, where we were heading to in train. So this is just the everyday reality of Ukrainians. At the same time, Dylan, what I saw is tremendous resilience, courage, optimism, because Ukrainians know that what they're fighting for is right, and they feel it in their bodies, they feel it in their soul. So that's why you see so much resolve in what they're doing. So another example I can give you is when I met folks from the Halo Trust. I met with many deminers that were there on site. A lot of them were women, quite young women, and this is very dangerous work. And it's kind of searching for a needle in a haystack. It's very difficult and it can be tiring. You have to be patient. And I asked those women, why were they doing what they were doing? And both of them were mothers. Both of them said to me, well, I want my children to be safe in our own neighborhood. I want to do my part to help my community. And this is my way to help. And what I saw over the last 2 days is that strong sense of commitment to their community. And in their own ways, each different individuals I met were there to do their part. So there's a very strong sense of solidarity. I think also that one of the challenges that we are dealing with is what is the next step when it comes to security needs of Ukraine? Because we're there to help Ukraine win, but even after the victory, they will still be next to a very dangerous neighbor. And that's why we need to have these conversations, address these issues, and I will be taking that issue and talking to my G7 colleagues in Munich because I think it's fundamental for the next steps.
Thank you. And my other question is actually about India, about human rights in India. You put out lots of statements, lots of tweets, but we didn't hear a lot about human rights. We have Human Rights Watch documenting a deterioration of the situation for minorities. We know that there was a crackdown while you were on the ground on the BBC screening a film about Modi's handling of ethnic violence. We did see the tweet about meeting with LGBT groups, but I'm wondering, under the Indo-Pacific strategy, if it means holding back on more public statements about human rights and raising it in more sort of subtle ways, if these are countries that we are trying to get close to under that strategy.
Well, Dylan, the Indo-Pacific strategy is clear when it comes to human rights. It's clear when it comes to India and human rights. And of course, I've raised this issue because I always do, and I always will.
Merci. I see one last hand, one last question. So if you do have a further question, please use the raise hand function at this moment. It's the last call. So next up, Brian Platt, Bloomberg.
Hi, Minister.
Hi, Brian.
Last year, I saw there was quite a bit of talk about Ukraine wanting to see a special tribunal set up for prosecuting Russian war crimes. Can you give us an update on where those discussions are at among G7 partners or in the with your international counterparts, and what our position is on a special tribunal?
So there are different accountability mechanisms that we've been supporting. So first, the ICJ, and we were one of the first countries, if not the first with Lithuania, to support Ukraine to deal with the question of war crimes and crimes against humanity before the ICJ against Russia. Also the ICC. And again, also we provided money, $10 million to the ICC to have the right capacity to be able to prosecute. And that includes a series of different types of crimes as well. And we have also Canadian experts. We have helped also, when I met with the prosecutor general, there's over 60,000 related crimes linked to the war due to Russia's aggression. So we've provided help to Ukraine to be able to have the capacity to investigate, to have the capacity also just to be able to support the judiciary as Ukrainians are seeking justice. And sexual violence was part also of that support, because victims have to go through, survivors need to be able to go through the Ukrainian judiciary itself. I think your question is much more about the crime of aggression, which is something that is still outstanding. And we've joined the core group of countries that believe that there should be a special tribunal on the crime of aggression, as the ICC and the ICJ don't have necessarily the mandate to be able to prosecute such a crime. And so that's why it's important that many countries address this issue, and we are working through the UN and through with the help of different experts on this question. And this is something that I spoke about with the president, with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and also with the Prosecutor General of Ukraine.
Okay, thank you. And so is our, are we in favor of creating that special tribunal, or are we, still weighing the options? How would you characterize our position?
Well, the fact that we're joining the core group on the creation of a special tribunal shows that we're in favor of the idea for sure.
Thank you. One last question. Yeah. Rose Libertium, Canadian Press.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for taking our questions today. I wanted to ask about the tanks. Canada, of course, was very quick to donate 4 tanks, and my understanding is they have since been delivered. They're already in Europe. But there had been an anticipated flood of tanks. I think everyone had been expecting kind of a rush to donate from European countries and others, but we really haven't seen that. And I'm wondering if there's disappointment on the part of the Canadian government that other countries haven't committed tanks as quickly and in the numbers that Ukraine was hoping for.
Certainly, we're very proud to be the first country to have sent tanks, because we believe that they will have an impact on the battlefield. It is a long winter, it is a tough winter, and it is a tough battlefield right now. So we think that these new capacities, once they will be on the battlefield, because right now we need to train Ukrainians in Poland on these tanks, will be providing Ukrainians with an edge to counter Russian forces. So we'll continue to be there to support Ukraine. We will be there also to advocate for its artillery needs. I know that Minister Anand has been doing that work, and I will also be doing that work as I'm heading to the Munich Security Conference and also the G7. And I hope that many other European countries will be able to send their own heavy artillery very soon.
And so it's just to confirm, Canada is advocating or lobbying other countries to send tanks. And and as my follow-up, the Defense Ministry, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, has had some allegations of corruption arise recently. We've seen some rumors, which turned out not to be true, but the Ukrainian Defense Minister possibly resigning. Instead, he's replaced 3 ministries. Can you speak to what conversations you had with Ukrainian officials about corruption, and what Canada is doing to try to get just make sure that this doesn't become an issue?
Well, yes, indeed, I raised the issue. It is important, as Ukrainians are fighting for their freedom to be able to live in a democracy, that the values underpinning democracy are protected. And I know also that Ukrainians themselves are following this issue, because when I met with civil society groups and when I met with the business community, they all brought it up as an issue of concern, and at the same time that they were happy with swift action on the part of the government. So I raised it with the president, with his chief of staff. I raised it particularly with the prosecutor general that is dealing with this issue, and the Minister of Internal Affairs that is also in charge of this issue, as he's in charge of police forces and the National Guard. So we will continue to push Ukraine for democratic reforms. I've had that conversation also with the Prime Minister himself. And we are also very pleased with the fact that while they are focused on defending their sovereignty and territorial integrity, that they're able to continue these democratic reforms and do this crackdown on corruption, because it is just in line with what they're fighting for on the battlefield, and what Western countries, including Canada, is also asking for.
Je ne vois plus d'autres questions, donc voilà qui met un terme à cette conférence de presse. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Ministre, et merci à chacun d'entre vous.
Thanks, guys. I'll go eat my pierogies now.
Bonne
Bye.
journée.
Merci. Merci.